two, 1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Teresa Alt.
My name is Pete Myers. I'm one of the founders back in 2003 of then the Tompkins County Living Wage Coalition. Because we started a workers' rights hotline 6 months in May of June of 2003, we decided to add a workers' rights hotline, which is actually one of the very few hotlines that serve all workers regardless of what industry they're in. So we started out as a Living Wage Coalition in 2006. We changed our name to the Workers Center because we were doing so much more. And actually, in the same year, 2006, we started the nation's very first Living Wage Employer Certification Program now, which has broadened out. There's a group of local coalitions called the Living Wage Network, which are primarily based in the Southeast, but we're kind of one of the anchors because we started the whole program in the first place. And now there's a national living wage employer program called Living Wage for Us. We started our work on creating a higher minimum wage in Tompkins County, making minimum wage a living wage, back in 2015. And it's been a long haul. The pandemic did not help us in that initial stage. I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to turn it over to the people that are going to give more information about this study. First, I will be introducing Ian Greer, Research Professor and Director at the Ithaca ILR Industrial Labor Relations School, the Co-Lab, as well as Rusty Weaver, the Director of Research at the Cornell ILR Buffalo Co-Lab. So, Ian Greer.
Good morning, everyone. So it's such an honor to be in the position where I get to help present the living wage number. It's an honor because it's a number that people around here know about. And it's not just journalists and elected people and policy people and union people and HR people who know about it. It's not just people I meet in community meetings or professional contexts. It's also something that comes up just at random times going around the community. A couple of years back, I was at a kid's birthday party, one of my son's friends, and one of the granddads said, "Did you see in the newspaper there's a Cornell professor complaining about how wages around here are too low?" And I had to say, okay, that must have been me and the living wage number. Okay, so yeah, this is really a fun part of my job, and so Rusty Weaver next to me, he's in the Buffalo Co-Lab. He actually did the calculation of the number. He also did some data analysis on the demographics of the low-wage workforce. So he's going to talk about all of that in a couple of minutes. So this is the third time that we've done it. Actually, Alternatives Federal Credit Union, which is represented here today, they had been calculating a living wage since the 90s. And what they did was quite pioneering. It was before other widespread living wage measures became available. So they did this for about 30 years. Then in 2022, the Workers Center did it 1 year. And then starting in 2023, we have been doing it. So much for background. Now I'm going to tell you what you came here for, what you have been waiting for. The living wage number for Tompkins County for 2026 is $25.08. Okay. So that is a very small increase from last year. It's a 1% increase for reasons that Rusty will talk about. Now, before I turn it over to Rusty, I want to do two things. First, I want to point out that that's about 24,000 workers who are making such low wages that it would seem that it's quite difficult for them to make ends meet. They struggle to pay for life's necessities. Not all of them, all households have different needs, but you know, it's a lot of people. That's about half of wage earners in the county. That percentage is much higher for black workers. So this is 24,000 disproportionately black, brown, female workers. Okay, so that's point one, just how many people this is, who it is. The second thing that I want to say is I want to alert everyone to a project that the Ithaca Co-Lab is doing in partnership with Tompkins County. We are organizing a study to help the county legislators decide what to do about a proposal for a countywide minimum wage, whether there should be a countywide minimum wage, how it should be set, how it should be adjusted. The core of this is a series of convenings that the public are invited to. So if you would like to give feedback to the county about this proposal, you can come to one of the convenings. There are also ways to provide written feedback. And if you are here, you probably signed a sign-in sheet, and I think the information about how to participate will go out to anyone on the sign-in sheet. I think leaflets are going around here with a QR code, which will also have information about how to participate. The first, so this is about minimum wage, the county project. The county project is not necessarily about living wage, although living wage data is one way you can set a minimum wage. So we're going to be talking about data again at 3 p.m. today at the ILR school. The data behind the calculation and demographic analysis of Rusty, but also other data on the drivers of cost of living increases and the local labor market. So that's at the ILR school, 3 p.m. today. If you want to come, just talk to me after. So that's it for me. Now I will turn it over to Rusty.
So my name, like Ian said, is Rusty Weaver. I'm Ian's counterpart in Buffalo. So I'm here from the Cornell ILR School's Buffalo Co-Lab. And as Ian said, the background for this is that this calculation has been done for over 30 years, and we have a great model to work from. There are many different ways to calculate a living wage. There are also several standard bearers out there that we tend to look to for comparisons. Many folks might be familiar with the national MIT living wage calculator. So that gives us values or numbers for wages that a full-time worker would need to earn based on their household composition, based on the number of adults and children inside of their household. And so the most common wage that we tend to look at from MIT is the wage for a single adult with no dependents. So one person living alone with no dependents. And right now, as of February of this year, the MIT living wage for a single adult with no dependents in Tompkins County is $24.60. So fairly close to our computation for the 2026 living wage of $25.08. So how do we get there? Where does the $25.08 come from? Historically, going back 30 years again, the method that has been used in Tompkins County is what's called a basic needs budgeting method for calculating a living wage, where effectively you strip out and look for all those categories of what could be considered a human's basic needs, and we look to see how much folks in Tompkins County are spending on those basic needs, and then we try to adjust the numbers down for a low income, single person household. So one person, one worker, living alone, no dependents, earning roughly 80% of the area median income for that type of household. The way that we do that is by tapping into, thanks to Cornell University, a commercial data set that disaggregates or localizes expenditure measures. The premier data on consumer expenditures in the US comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where it gives us information again on how much households spend on various categories of things, including basic needs. From that, unfortunately, we can get disaggregated data only for New York State, and it tends to be on a bit of a time lag just because of how it's collected, the length of time it takes to collect that data and then publish it out so that we have statistically reliable estimates. Now, New York State data isn't necessarily as representative of what's going on in Tompkins County as if we could get localized measures. So again, when Ian and I took the calculation over a couple of years ago, we looked at the resources that we had access to through the university and how we might be able to assist with computing this measure every year. And one thing that we do have access to is commercial data, business analysts that entrepreneurs tend to look at to understand patterns of disposable income and potential for opening a new establishment in different areas. And so with that, those expenditure data, they get highly localized, down to, in our case, the county level of analysis. So we can pool for Tompkins County average household expenditures on categories of basic needs. And in this case, again, following the model that Alternatives laid down about 30 years ago, we look at 9 categories of basic needs. So we look at housing, transportation, and food are the big ones, but then also health insurance, recreation, savings, rattling them off here, I'm not even keeping track myself. Effectively, again, just what folks need to survive year to year, day to day, going forward. And so with these 9 categories of spending, the data that we get, again, whether it's from Bureau of Labor Statistics or from our commercial data set, it shows us average household expenditures. A low-income individual living alone is not an average household, so we need to adjust those figures downward. The way we do that is every year New York State publishes what are called income limits or thresholds that qualify you for low income based on where you live, based on the county that you live in. So right now, for a single person household in Tompkins County, the low income threshold, which is again 80% of the area median income, is around $62,800, would be the low income threshold for a single person living alone. That would translate to an hourly wage that's considerably above $25.08. So again, what we're doing here is we're not looking for how can someone sustain themselves based on average spending patterns in Tompkins County. We're looking for a basic needs budget by scaling down to a household that again is earning less than the area median income and is a single person living alone with no dependents. The way we do that is from all of the spending that households do, we look at just those 9 categories, and we make the adjustment, again, based on the ratio of what that single person's low income is relative to the average household income. And then we can scale down average expenditures based on that information. And when we do that, for the 9 categories, I'm sorry, we don't have hard copies here for you today, but the report should be available for folks online. You can look at the PDF. In page 2, there's a table where we break down these categories. And the single biggest component, as folks might imagine, is housing. Right now, the way that we determine the cost of housing for a low-income household in Tompkins County is by looking at county-specific data from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. Housing and urban development is, again, where those low-income thresholds come from, so this 80th percentile of area median income, for example. And what we do with that is HUD publishes a data set for all rental units inside of the county, and it looks at the 40th percentile rents by bedroom, by number of bedrooms. So what we do is we zoom in and we look for a 1-bedroom unit, because again, we're looking at a single person living alone, and we look at the 40th percentile rent for a 1-bedroom unit in Tompkins County, which is currently $1,466 per month. So that's the single biggest component of a basic needs budget. Again, it's not for a luxury unit, it's not for new housing, it's for a 40th percentile unit in Tompkins County. The next biggest expenditure category comes out to be transportation. Now, there's not a huge public transportation footprint in the county, so it is a very, while it is much more walkable than, say, the rural area of Buffalo, where I'm coming here from, it's still a driving heavy type of a county, especially for folks that don't live in the downtown core, that don't live right in the city of Ithaca. And so for, a moderate income, 80th percentile income household, one person, the costs appear to be about $520 a month just for transportation, which is the second heftiest element in those basic needs. From there, food and healthcare, miscellaneous expenditures and savings, all mirror kind of what the numbers were last year when we calculated this number, and there's a reason for that. I know folks right now are probably sitting there thinking grocery prices have really escalated. Gas right now, where I came from, is $4.19 a gallon. Why aren't these figures captured here? And the reason is the data are collected on a time lag. So a lot of what we're seeing right now with these really heavy price increases, some of them are downstream effects of global conflict, where we see the price of oil and fuel rising, which is creating upward pressure on everything from fertilizer to plastics and basically everything we buy. And so that is not included in these numbers because, again, spending data happen, we have to wait for people to spend money and then we see what that is. And so right now people are spending in this sort of rough, high inflation environment, and so that's to say, we might expect this number to tick up more than the 1% it did from year to year this year for next year. Right now, we're sort of almost looking a little bit backwards, and that's why the number is kind of similar to what it was when we computed this last year. When we did it last year, there was a huge jump, and that's because housing, again, for folks locally in the market, really took off. That housing number went from $1,200 and something a month up to nearly $1,500 a month the last time we did this. So now we're seeing prices tend to stabilize a little bit because there's less real estate market activity going on because of some of those macroeconomic pressures. So again, what we have is not a huge increase, but it is an increase, and we do see cost of living rising more right now in this moment. And so for what's to come, we might expect the living wage number next year to show a bit more of an increase than it did this year. So we always just like to sort of set that expectation going forward. The last thing I'll say, that's how the number was calculated. So again, drawing on this basic needs budgeting method, I already compared us to the MIT living wage. If we looked at what's called the housing living wage for a person in Tompkins County, the housing wage is, for those who follow federal government standards, a household is supposed to pay no more than 30% of their gross monthly income on housing. If they are, they're considered housing cost burden if they exceed that threshold. That housing becomes unaffordable for them. So another way that folks tend to calculate a living wage is just by backing into that number. What would the wage be so that I spent no more than 30% of my income on a 40th percentile rent for one bedroom, which is $1,466 a month? That comes out to be a little north of, or a little south of $29, $28.96 per hour for Tompkins County. So again, the number that we compute this year is a bit more conservative than some of the other estimates that we'll see out there, and that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, what's happening right now with inflating prices isn't captured in it. And number two, we don't look at just housing, but housing alongside all of these other basic needs. So again, the number that we land on for this year is $25.08. That would be considered a living wage in Tompkins County based on spending patterns for these 9 items that we take a look at. And right now, about half of the workforce in Tompkins County earns below that threshold. If we include college students, so folks who are indicated as living in group quarters, which are like institutionalized folks, which here usually means college students, more than half of the workforce earns sub-living wages if we were to include that group of individuals. When we filter out folks living in group quarters, so again, mostly college students, which is about 3,400 workers in Tompkins County, it's still nearly half of workers earn below a living wage. Just south of 24,000 workers, 49.6% of the workforce earn below that level. And so again, I think one of the reasons why we do this every year is to call attention to that cost of living is rising, but wages don't seem to be keeping pace with cost of living, and so it's putting folks in the county in more and more precarious positions. Again, we have the report available online. We have a demographic breakdown that shows the rates by race, ethnicity, by gender, by industry. As you might not be surprised, the largest industry with sub-living wage workers in terms of the percentage is food and accommodation services, where nearly 8 out of 10 workers are sub-living wage earners. The industry with the most numerically sub-living wage earners is one of the prominent industries here, education services. Now the rate of earning sub-living wages in education services is only about 40%, but because it's such a big industry, that translates to about 6,500 people. And so again, this isn't a problem that's just concentrated at the end of the economic ladder. It's not just a problem for teenagers and college students. Sub-living wage earning is something that affects every industry of the regional economy. It affects folks at every age level with every educational background, and that information is available in the full report. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. This might be a time for questions and answers if you have any.
I'm Wales Brown. I remember seeing in the newspapers last year that the Trump government was fooling around with the figures from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Have you still got trustworthy data from them?
Rusty Weaver said,
So that's a question we face a lot. And so what's that's referring to is there was the head of the BLS back in, well, the head of the BLS statistics program back in, I believe it was November, Dr. Erica McCantor, was let go because the administration at that level did not like one of the monthly jobs reports, I believe was the impetus. And so that person was let go, and there was a bit of concern that BLS data were going to begin to show skew, that they would start to like deviate from patterns that had been established. What I would say is, while one figurehead was replaced at the BLS, the team of statisticians and economists that collect the data, that manage the data and put it out there is largely still in place. And so the systems that the BLS uses and the protocols for data collection and publishing are all still in place. The one thing that has created hiccups in this process, though, is that we have had jobs reports and BLS data releases that just haven't happened because of various government shutdowns over the past couple of years. And so that does make this work a little bit more difficult. But the data itself, again, should still be good, usable, reliable. I don't think any of the protocols, at least as far as I can tell, changed on data collection. And so I think that we're still in good shape with the data there.
This is why this report is coming out in March rather than February. Some of the data we needed was delayed.
Said a couple of times that the report is online. Could you give a little guidance as to where to look online?
It'll be up on our website at the Workers Center this afternoon. I can't speak because Co-Lab may have it up already.
Co-Lab will have it up sometime soon. I don't know when. Okay, the new number is 2508. Can you all remember that?
Wales Brown asked.
What's this going to do to the certification of employers? Are some of them immediately going to fall out? Or?
Pete Myers said.
Well, as a matter of fact, last year, living wage increased to $24.82, and that was a 35% increase from the previous 1846 or so. So that we actually had 129 living wage employers in January of last year, and they had to be certified by the end of last year. And now we have 28, a total of 28. So we lost a bit over 100 living wage employers.
County Legislator Veronica Pillar asked.
Can you explain the certification program a little bit more? Like, is it simply that all employees of any kind of the organization must be making the living wage number or above? Or are there nuances for including benefits or excluding types of employees or something?
Pete.
The big factor is the health insurance, how it can lower.
Ian Greer added.
Yeah, so in this year's report, actually, there's a paragraph about how health insurance is used to adjust the number for the living wage certification program. And so there's a certain amount in the living wage calculation, hourly figure, that is attributable to commercial health insurance, which is, I forget, $1.60 an hour, thereabouts. And so that is a certain number of dollars per year. And to the extent that an employer reduces or eliminates that expenditure by the worker, the employer is reducing their cost of living, right? And so the living wage certification program revises the living wage downward according to savings on commercial health insurance.
Pete Myers said.
I will just add some of the experience I had last year was with some of the living wage employers that weren't able to make the living wage were actually incredibly generous with their health insurance benefits, but it didn't make the cut for how much they could actually lower their living wage by.
Rusty Weaver said.
The only thing I'll throw out, if folks are wondering what $25.08 per hour is annually, it is $52,170 is what we're looking at as an annual living salary.
Ian Greer said.
So every household has different needs, obviously, and that is $50,000 and a little bit is probably enough for some households and not enough for others. generally our way of thinking about it is it's a figure for a single person who lives alone, no kids, living very frugally. So it's a conservative, the living wage number is deliberately conservative. Oh, Adolfo has a question.
Adolfo Romero asked,
the wage does increase, how would that impact different employers or companies, groups? Who would be the ones that get most impacted by the changes of minimum wage?
Rusty Weaver replied,
Well, I mean, in terms of burden, who does it fall on? That's a little bit of a tricky situation because right now, when employers don't pay living wages and workers are able to qualify for things like public benefits, it falls on society to benefit that type of work. And so I guess the concept of an increased minimum wage or matching minimum wage to living wage would change that burden a bit and shift some of it from the public onto the employer. And of course, we heard from Pete that that's what happened when the number increased as drastically as it did last year. We lost a ton of employers. So right now, with voluntary compliance in a program like this, it is going to be difficult to ensure that every worker who's below this level is going to get up to a living wage. And I think that just speaks to the broader systemic and structural policies that we need to sort of think about for maybe permanently shifting that burden away from the public and more to the employers that benefit from the workers' labor. But again, that's just off the cuff. I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry.
Ian Greer added,
Well, let me just say that 82% of workers in accommodation and food service are making less than living wage. It's 78% for retail trade. It's 73% for real estate rental and leasing. For agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting, it's 77%. So, it's not distributed equally between different kinds of employers. Now, I've done a couple of studies that involved interviews with employers. Low wages are a real problem for workers' lives, and they create a lot of instability. And instability in workers' lives, transportation crises, eviction, health crises, all these things that become much more likely if you're living in poverty. These are problems for employers because employers need their workers to show up.
Joe Cummins of Alternatives Federal Credit Union concluded.
I'll add to that. So at Alternatives Federal Credit Union, we often hire sub-living wage employees, and what we see is that eventually they become homeowners. We've watched them become homeowners, so now they can build generational wealth, and that definitely makes people happy. So I guess it's your business model. You can also change people's lives in addition to make a profit.
And creating residential stability like that means higher property tax revenues for your community, more disposable income being spent in your community, and those dollars recycling.
This has been Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Teresa Alt. Thanks for watching.
2, 1, 2, 3.